Hello BookTube, hello everyone, my name is Paul and today I would like to discuss the book that I've just finished reading, which is Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King. Hopefully you can see the cover there. I'd been wanting to read this book for some time, but wasn't really sure about whether to pick it up. The reason being that I've read quite a lot of Stephen King and I've liked a good few of the books, but there have been quite a few Stephen King books that have been a bit hit and miss for me. I suppose my main complaint would be that the endings have been a bit unsatisfying for me, let's put it that way. You know, I've often felt that the stories haven't really been given a good, satisfying conclusion. That's in my opinion anyway. So for some of his books, I mean, the ones that the Stephen King books that I have enjoyed, I've really enjoyed. You know, The Shining, Insomnia, Dolores Claiborne, Misery. I've loved those books, really loved them. But there's been a few that, as I've said, have really been quite frustrating reads, because I find that the ideas are good but the endings have let me down. So I became aware of the concept for this book, and it basically is about a situation where the female half of the world come under this kind of not spell, but they fall asleep on what appears to be a permanent basis, and the story involves trying to figure out what's going on with that and trying to find a resolution. And that idea, as I say, that idea intrigued me, and I was very tempted to read the book, but it's a big book, it's a long book. I mean, we're talking about, in the paperback edition at least, we're talking about over 700 pages. And I'm quite a slow reader, so that's quite an investment of time for me to get through this. And I suppose my biggest fear was, am I going to get to the end of 700 plus pages and then have an unsatisfying ending? But without giving any spoilers or giving anything away, I was very pleasantly surprised with this book, because one, I really liked it, and two, the ending I felt with this one was satisfying. So yeah, I was happy with it in that regard. I'm also aware that with Sleeping Beauties, I've watched quite a few booktube videos around Stephen King books, and I'm very aware that this book has not got a popular following among, you know, real hardened Stephen King fans. But so I'm aware that I'm kind of, maybe I'm in the minority with my opinion on this book, but I thought it was outstanding. You know, of all the Stephen King books that I've read, this has to be right up there among, you know, my top favourites, maybe even my favourite Stephen King book. And of course it's co-written by Owen King, so I guess we have to consider the influence that he's had on the story, which is bound to make a difference. But yeah, it's definitely become one of my favourites. I suppose the next point that I'd like to make is that I watched a review, or not a review of this book, but I watched another booktuber discussing the possibility of reading this book, and she was a little bit concerned that, with the premise of the story being that, as I've already said, the female half of the world falls asleep and can't be woken up. The male half of the world is okay, and you could read into that situation that women are in their most vulnerable state, because when you're asleep, that's possibly the most vulnerable that you can be. And men are fine, they're in their powerful state, more powerful state, or superior state. That's what could be read into the premise of the story. And so I could understand how some women could be put off by the idea of this story. But what I would say to them is to go ahead and read this, because you're going to be surprised. Despite the premise of the story, women come out of this very strongly, and that's not giving anything away. There's more to the story than them just falling asleep. Other things are going on, as you would suspect. But the idea of women being put in an inferior position in this story, and somehow in a situation where they can be taken advantage of, no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, that there's some of that going on, but no, women come out of this very well, I would say. So yeah, the other thing is, with this, there's a lot of characters in the book. There is a huge amount of characters in the story, and that also concerned me before I started the book, because I was thinking, well, do I really want to work so hard trying to remember who's who with this huge cast list, so to speak? But I actually find it okay. I find it quite easy to keep track of the characters, so for me that wasn't a problem, and so I wouldn't let that put you off, because if I can keep track of the characters, probably most people would be able to do that. The other thing with the characters in Stephen King books, I find, not just with this book but across the board, I find a lot of the characters quite similar. They seem to have similar backgrounds from similar kinds of people, and I don't think there's much diversity in the characters sometimes. Maybe people that are more well read in Stephen King books would disagree, but that would be one slight complaint that I have with it. But that being said, the characters are still very interesting, and there's still a lot of stuff from the characters to draw on, and so yeah. But yeah, there's not just a huge amount of diversity in Stephen King characters and books, I find, but that doesn't bother me too much. One of the great things about this book is that it really reflects human nature and how human beings can behave in extreme situations. How mass hysteria can kick in, how people can lose their ability to think and have sound judgment when things like desperation take over and anger takes over, and who can keep their head, who can't keep their head, and all that sort of stuff. So I find that side of the story very interesting, and in fact the human nature element of it plays a very interesting role towards the end of the book. But I'm not going to go into that, obviously, because I don't want to spoil the ending for people. The other thing that I would say on this is, and this isn't a problem of the book, it's a problem that I have. And Stephen King's just one example, of course, of a writer in this genre. But I guess I have a bit of a red line in my mind whereby I can suspend disbelief to a certain extent. And then if I feel it starts to get a little bit silly with the more fantastic or supernatural element to the story, I begin to switch off and be put off by reading the book if it just gets, I feel that it's starting to get a little bit too fantastic. But I didn't find that I had a problem in that regard with this book. I find I was able to suspend disbelief, go with the flow, and just enjoy the story for what it was. And I think that's something that's very personal to me. I think I'm getting better at suspending disbelief and going with the flow. So maybe if I'm getting better at that, I can go back and revisit some of the older Stephen King books where that was more of a problem for me. So, and the other aspect of this was, I find it had a very good plot. I found that there were many threads to the story. There were many storylines that were merging together and running in parallel. And that worked for me. You know, it kept me interested. It kept me going. Because like I mentioned before, this is a 700 plus page book. And I know that from watching other reviews, a lot of people felt that that was a problem. I didn't think it was a problem. I thought the length of the story was fine. I thought the length of the book was fine. I felt despite it being 700 plus pages, it kept my interest throughout. And I actually can't remember there being much of a lull in the book where I felt, okay, this is starting to get a bit boring now. My interest was maintained all the way through, and it certainly, there was parts of it that really kept me on the edge of my seat. So, no, I would say the length of the book was actually about right for the intricateness or the depth of the story. You know, I think the whole thing just worked for me. So no, I wouldn't say that the story was too long. So overall, I would probably give this book, on a rating of 1 to 10, I would give it about 8.5 out of 10. So I really would recommend it, but also bear in mind that a lot of Stephen King fans really aren't very enthusiastic about this, but I enjoyed it, so, and all I can really do is give my own my own thoughts and feelings on the book. So yeah, that's Stephen King, Sleeping Beauties. Also co-written by Owen King, of course. We can't overlook Owen King. I think I did feel a difference in this book, which was very likely Owen King's influence. And if it was Owen King's influence that I was detecting, then it's no bad thing. So, yeah. So anyway, that's Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King. Highly recommend it. And that's just about it for today. So, as usual, thank you for watching. If you've read this book, I would love to know your thoughts on it. So please leave your comments or get in touch. And that's it for today. So thanks for watching. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a good day. And yeah, take care. Bye for now.